Hi there, Obi-Juan here. I'm back with another tutorial. This time we're going to be looking at the Dimehead NAM player, which is essentially a device that can play your NAM files on a portable device. It's built like a tank, low latency. This thing is solid. It's amazing what NAM has become, especially in the last year or so, with all the different plugins that support the NAM file, the NAM player. Like everybody says, it's a great time to be a guitar player. I also want to take a quick second to thank Ben for letting me use his NAM player so I can make some videos for you guys and some content. You know, initially, the NAM player was not in my radar of a device that I wanted to get. And the reason is because I only play guitar in my studio, my home studio. So in my workflow, it's more convenient to just use the plugin, as I can load many instances of it. One scenario that I constantly run across is I like to get my mixes going early, so I will have a lot of plugins in my session even when I'm tracking. In the beginning, this is okay as my CPU can handle many instances of NAM, but the more plugins I add, the system starts to bog down. So I start freezing tracks so I can move on with the project and kind of deal with everything at the end. The more I thought about it, a device like the NAM player, it's a great solution for what I do, because I can get my mixes going, run a lot higher latency that I would normally use, and use the NAM player to monitor with low latency. And also, I'm essentially freezing my tracks on the way in. It allows me to treat it more like a real amp and commit to that tone earlier in the process. That can be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a thing that I like to do every once in a while, just to commit to tones early. Also, I tend to write my solos later in the process as well. This would allow me to track solos with a full mix going and not have to worry about latency, since I can monitor in real time. With that said, the goal of this video is to show you how I incorporate the NAM player in my home studio. I will show you all the routing, the setup in Reaper, and hopefully it can give you some ideas on how you can set it up in your studio. Or maybe you're considering a NAM player, and this gives you some ideas on how you can use it in your home studio if you don't play live. Let's get started with the routing setup. In my home studio, I have an Audient Evo 16 audio interface. This is the hub to my studio. I have an RNC compressor hooked up to it. I have my reamp box. I have my DI box hooked up to it as well. I have a loop going to some pedals. I have the return from my loud box, my amps there, mics. So what I would like to do is incorporate the NAM player into my current setup by making a loop in my audio interface that I can split the DI and set up the NAM player for low latency monitoring and be able to track as well. In my setup, my reamp box is output number 3, which is this one over here. Then we're going to connect the output from the Dimehead player, input number 6, in my audio interface. In my setup, I connect the guitar cable coming from my guitar into input number 1. In my setup, I raise my input 5 dB to minimize noise floor. My speakers are connected to outputs 1 and 2. In the end, when it's all hooked up, it should look like this. Now that we have set up all the connections, let's look at my audio interface software to begin routing the signals. Let's take a look at the Evo mixer. The signal is coming into mic number 1. We rename this. guitar input. And this mix controls what we actually monitor. So I don't want to hear my guitar input, my dry guitar input signal in my mix. So this one goes to 0. What we do want is set the signal to output number 3, which is my reamp out, before it hits the DAW. So how do we do that? In my audio interface, I'm gonna use a Q. QA. You use these to do custom routings. So we're gonna call this Q output out to NAM player. So in here, this Q, we wanna send this signal. Okay, that's 0 gain. So whatever's coming in number 1, we wanna be able to hear it in this Q input. We will go to our settings. In this settings, you control what you send through your outputs. So that was QA, which is this one. We want to be able to send output 3, which is this one. When I send QA, so the guitar signal output through my output 3 as a mono signal. Output 3, remember, is connected to my reamp box. So by doing this, we should be able to route the input signal, a copy of the input signal from the guitar, to this Q out to output number 3 on my interface. So if we do a quick test by strumming the guitar, we should be able to see the input coming into the NAM player, but we shouldn't be able to hear anything yet. As you can see, we have signal coming in. Now we have the NAM player with the signal that it needs from the guitar. Now we need to send the process signal back to the interface. So to do that, we already have that connection made. That's input number 6, this one. So, and we strum the guitar. So you can see that is the process signal from the Dimehead player. Now that we have this signal here, we want to be able to do 2 things with it. 1, send it directly to our speakers, and this will give us the low latency monitoring that the NAM player provides. And second, we want to send this input signal to the DAW and record it as well. The benefit of this is that the DAW can be set up to a high latency and have all your mastering chain plugins if you like, and still be able to record with really low latency, which is a great setup to have. So now master mix controls what I hear. So we want to go to my pedals input, raise this to 0 dB, and at this point I should be hearing the NAM player. So now we have the NAM player loop completed. We can do low latency monitoring with the NAM player. Now let's switch over to the DAW. In Reaper, we're going to start with 1 track. We're going to change the input to input number 6. I still haven't labeled this one. Then we're going to arm the track. And this input corresponds to the same input on the audio interface, this one that we are monitoring already. So when we play, we should be able to hear the guitar. That's cool, but we're monitoring twice. We're monitoring through the DAW with latency, and then we're monitoring through the speakers without latency. So you get a phasey effect. So you want to make sure that your record monitoring is off when you're doing this setup. You should also be able to track with a high buffer set up in your DAW. Have a bunch of plugins loaded up and still have the ability to monitor your guitar at really low latency. The other thing that you could do is record your DI coming from input number 1 that is being sent to the player, and also your wet signal coming back from the NAND player at the same time. This is useful if you want to use your DI to reamp at a later time. You will set up another track, arm it. We're going to be using input number 1. So this track is in the NAND player. If I can type. And this track is the guitar DI. You arm both. You don't need to monitor either. Then you have your DI here. And your wet signal. Pretty cool setup. Let's make a quick preset on the NAND player. In the USB, I put in my latest capture and some IRs from PitPris here. Gonna plug it in the back of the NAND player. As soon as you plug it in, you get this import menu. And I want to import this one. This is the file that I put in the USB. Import that. Then we have the Trinity IR pack from PitPris. And I'm going to import that one as an IR. Gonna import another one. I'll do the first 3. And we close back out. So now that we have it loaded in, I'm going to navigate to an empty bank. Let's do preset 7. Let's just start off from the top. Gonna leave the gate off. Leave the gain standard. Here's where you pick the NAND file. So mine is a user file. So the ones that I already tested. Try with this one. Give some noise. Maybe I'll turn that gate off for a few. There. EQ, all default. Volume, normalize. Let's see. Let's add some. With like a 25%. See how that sounds like. Reaper file. I think that's if you have like a reverb IR. You can load your own. That's pretty cool. And then for the IR, you can do a high pass and low pass. And we're gonna go to the user folder, and those are the 3 that I imported. Just gonna go with the first one. And what's this? That's if you want to change the number of the preset. And still not sure what that one does. That one is to save. And then this one. That's if you want to import. Oh, that's cool. It's like a if you're playing live, could be useful. And this one takes you to the settings. In the settings, you have 3 menus on the bottom. I think I need to do an update. I haven't gotten to that part yet. I'm not sure if this is the latest firmware yet. So I just got the unit this past week. Thank you, Ben. And then let me know if this is the latest one. But probably get to that this week and start making some more content with it. It's a pretty cool device. Feels really solid in the hands. Like I really like the knobs. Switches. Feels good. Pretty cool stuff. So let's see how that preset sounds. So we get everything ready. Let's give it a go.